Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's live discussion. We're talking about A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, starting our series of discussion here with our discussion of episode 1 of season 1, The Hedge Knight, I believe it's called. So I'm joined here by very special guests. First, I haven't been around too much lately, but Don, great to see you again. Thanks so much for joining.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. Oh, no, sorry. We are back in Westeros. This, everyone. Yeah, so good to be back here with the guys and discussing A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. And fingers crossed we get the whole damn series, even if George doesn't finish the book.
Yeah. And also joining us, Darrin. Once again, Darrin, thanks so much for joining.
I am so stoked to be here. This feels like old times. This, nice little group and back. We're diving back into Westeros here. It's kind of warming my heart. So I am excited to be here and looking forward to journeying back to these lands.
So, am I correct in assuming that we've all read the books?
Yes.
I did the audio book on a long trip up north, so I've had effectively done that, but I heard the book but didn't read the book. But yes.
Yes, me as well. I listened to the audiobook, but it was like a week ago, so it's still very fresh in my mind. But yeah, so there won't be any spoilers for the book, so you don't have to worry about that. We're gonna keep it show discussion only. And we will give spoilers for the episode, though. So hopefully you had seen the episode before watching a video like this. Anyway, so yeah, let's start with our overall impressions of the show. I think this show, and I've heard other people say this, and I think it is a very apt observation, is what it needs to be. Like, it's the kind of show that it should be for this story. Because I'm thinking of the Hobbit movies and how that was not the type of movies it should be for the story. They tried to make it grand and grandiose and like Lord of the Rings when it wasn't. That's not what that story was. And when I thought about it, like, they could have done the same thing here. They could have tried to make it grand and epic battles and grandiose and Game of Thrones like, but they didn't. They suited what the story needs to be, and it was a much more lower scale. And I think they even did this thing where they kind of faked you out when the music started to amp up, and then it hard cut to him taking his shit. So it was like, it was telling you, like, no, this is not that kind of show. This is not that kind of in your face dragons or big battles or multiple characters. It's the type of show that fits these stories. And so I heard about these stories like 9-10 years ago or something when I was first getting into Game of Thrones, but I never got around to reading them until just recently. And I know people have been calling for a show of it for like when Game of Thrones was still airing. So we finally got to a point where they did it, and I think George apparently spoke very highly of this and spoke highly of the showrunner and said that it suited it. So that alone, I think, should have keyed that it was, that it was going to fit the story, which is what I think it does. But anyway, let me turn it over to Don. What were your overall thoughts on this first episode?
So I'm going to say that I definitely thought that they did a good job of like translating from book to show, a lot of the stuff that you would want to see. So like for the things that were Dunk's like inner monologue, we got the action on screen, and then when it would transition to the stuff that he would say, that he would actually speak, they like a lot of the dialogue was pulled directly from the book, and so if you read the book, it was like, oh, okay, all right, we so far so good, doing very well here. then when the music starts to swell and then it just does that hard cut, it's just kind of like, I don't know that we necessarily needed that. I understand that this is supposed to be a story more about, the small folk and that whole thing, but like just because, they happen to live in places like Flea Bottom doesn't mean that, you just take a crap all over everything. Um, I'm still wondering if they're even going to do any sort of intro for this show at all, because if you guys remember, House of the Dragon episode 1 did not have an intro to it. It wasn't until we got to the second episode where we found out they're going to use the same Game of Thrones music, and they had the whole bloodline thing. So, they could be doing the same thing.
So, if I may, I heard from people who saw the screeners, I believe they saw the entire season, that there is no intro in the show.
Okay, cool. I mean, listen, I don't mind it either way. I was just, figured, all right, well, maybe they're doing the same thing like House of the Dragon, because I did hear that this episode was supposed to be the longest out of all of them. This one was like around 45 minutes, and I think everything else falls in around a half an hour. So, yeah, I mean, listen, intro, no intro, I'm good with it all. I think the actors did a very good job. I mean, especially Dunk. I think you definitely get the vibe that yes, he is Dunk the Lunk, thick as a castle wall. He's constantly bumping his head, and you can see how he really is trying to fit into this whole world. And even though he has training in it, he's still an outsider. Like he shows up at the 20 grounds of what he has to do to even enter the list. And like we'll get to that later. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but overall, I think this was a great introduction. Just in terms of character kind of unfolding mystery as to who's going to be who, like the gentleman at the end, who is Egg, why is he following Dunk around, and why does he know so much? Lionel the Laughing Storm, like, oh yeah, definitely he is Baratheon through and through. And Fossil Ways, very interesting characters, and I want to see how close they stick to the books with regards to their characterizations. So, yeah, and with that, I think I'll turn it over to the man with the illustrious hair.
Yeah, well, I mean, I am right with you, Mark, when you talk about the smaller scale of this story. It feels like it is. In fact, I like the fact that we don't have a big intro. The fact that they do just bring up a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms and bring on, to me, is what's needed and worked very well in keeping the story small and contained and feeling like that's what it's supposed to be. I think that's something that they did really well. I also agree with Dawn. Our Dunk is perfect. I think he is great. I think he brings a character. He's, I guess, a rugby player originally, something like that. So he's got that good physicality to him, and I think he brings himself very much, like you said, of Dunk the Lunk. He's there's not a whole lot there. He's just earnestness is really what's behind him. So there was a lot in the feel that they had. That hard cut honestly was something I didn't need. One, I really don't need to see you spurting out of your ass, quite literally, on it. And also it felt oddly comical. I know this is supposed to be a little more funny. There's a little more humor that tends to be into this, but that was almost Adam Sandler-esque that you steered into. And I was like, I didn't need to get that. You could have just brought me in the story and I would have accepted it. I don't need the tease and reversal in order to shock me that this isn't going to be that type of story. So there was some of that, that little bit kind of like, it threw me off just because then I was like, well, is this going to be a farce? Is this the type of humor that we're going? with, which, I mean, thankfully did not, and I don't need to see it. So that's kind of one of my own my first criticism. My second one, and even though overall I did like the story, and it's been a long time since I did the audiobook, so I don't remember a lot of the specifics. I did remember Egg being a little smartass and knowing a lot more than he should, and I think that was played very well. Again, I think the actors here did great in their jobs. I don't know if as a pilot, it did a job of drawing me into the story. I don't feel that there was a hook anywhere within this. I think there were things that happened and some interesting characters, but nobody that... Look, Game of Thrones had an awesome White Walker opening reveal, and then you had Sean Bean show up and give this great, like, parental type of thing, and it really kind of established stuff. And by the end of that episode, you have, Kid being pushed out of a tower. And I know this is not a Game of Thrones story, but those are things that draw you in, find interesting characters, and leave you in a good point. Here, I just felt I was perusing through this kind of afternoon with Dunk, and I didn't feel like I got hooked or grabbed or given that thing. The fact that it was 42 minutes, I was like, that seems really short for a pilot. But if you're telling me that the other episodes were only like a half an hour, while I'm enjoying the story, and I know that the story gets... I remember listening to the book going, it started off kind of, I'm not sure, but it really hooked me going on. And so I have a reason to look forward to. I don't know if as an audience member first seeing this without knowing anything else, if it was enough for me to go, wow, I can't wait till next week. It might be more like, hey, I might check this out. Don't really know what the whole list things or what these knights or these, we didn't even really see part of the tournament. We just saw the Baratheon beating the crap out of his cousin there. So, I mean, that's really kind of my only kind of critique of the show, is even though I think it was very well done and I like the actors in there, I like all the performances, I don't know if as a pilot, it did the job of hooking me in. Even though obviously I'm definitely going to be back next week. So
Mark,
I was muted. I was trying to get back to the screen to unmute myself. So I believe the dude who's beating up his cousin, that was Sir Stefan, and his cousin was like Raymond.
Yeah. I did remember everybody's name, and I think that was a problem for me.
I remember them because as I said, I just read the book, and they were... I remember them from the book. I didn't remember Sir Lionel Baratheon. I didn't remember him from the book, so I feel like they enlarged his role for the show. But we'll get to that later. But do you remember down there? What was their last name? The Sir Stefan and his cousin Raymond.
Fossaways.
Fossaway. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So I guess I'm seem to be most positive on the show here. I'm definitely the only one who liked that hard cut. See, I don't know. I interpreted it a bit different than Darrin. I didn't see it as like an Adam Sandler kind of over the top ridiculousness. I just saw it as a kind of like, this is just a lazy lump or whatever. He's not like a great man, and this was more of like getting us into the kind of... I think of fit with the rest of the humor of the show, actually. But I could definitely see, because it's definitely a shit joke, so I can see how that could come off to some people as being too like over the top. But I personally,
It's the literally flying out of the butt shot. I mean,
see, I don't know. I just thought it was perfect to be like the way they had the music start to swell up, and you think, oh, it's gonna be epic, and then no, he's just taking a shit. Like to me, that's like the show saying, like, we are not Game of Thrones. We are not going to be epic battles and that sort of thing. So I don't know. I thought it worked, but yeah, and as for some people in the chat joined. Thanks so much. We got Bill, Casey, and Rob from Smirking Gun, and we're both kind of saying that agreeing with you, Darrin, that the first episode did not have that pull, and I actually do agree with that. I'm not going to argue with that, but that's actually what I was expecting. But maybe that's because I just read the book. So maybe for people, I might have a very different perspective on it had I not read the book. If I just watched the show, I would have been like, this is it. Like, that's it. Hopefully, I mean, not every show, to be fair, not every great show pulls you in the first episode. Some take a few episodes and hopefully this show will be one of them, but you got to kind of trust in that maybe that's the case. So also, shows like that tend to be the shows that you want to binge watch rather than week to week if they take a little while to get going. But as I said, like, knowing the story and how small scale it is, I figured that it is not only does it not going to have like epic battles, but it's also going to be a lot slower paced as well. And I think the main difference is focusing on just this one character rather than having multiple characters across multiple locations. It's also going to be a great distance. So, yeah, the first thing I want to get into is the introduction of Duncan, which we talked about a bit. And how, like, just over the whole episode, like, how you get a sense of the character and does he come off as a strong character? I think that he does. And someone mentioned the actor who played them. One of the complaints I heard about the actor was the fact that he's in his 20s, where the character of Dunk is supposed to be like 14, 15. But I'm used to that because that's what they did in Game of Thrones with characters like Robb Stark, and they cast like a 28-year-old when he was supposed to be like 15 or something. So I'm kind of used to that.
Yeah, also with like Ned. I mean, basically, all right, so for everyone out there, they've aged everyone up from everything except for maybe like 3 characters throughout the entire series. So if you're a book like the rest of us, it's going to be like, Sean Bean should not be playing Ned Stark because Ned Stark is about 20 years younger than Sean Bean. But,
so that's true, but the Robb Stark always bothered me the most because the characters in the show were still acting like he was a teenager, but he wasn't. Like with Ned Stark, they were treating him like he was in his 40s in the show, but yeah, so the young wolf and you're young and inexperienced. So like he's in his 30s, but and the thing with Dunk is, I think the character himself kind of makes more sense if he's a teenager, that he's young and inexperienced and doesn't really know what's going on. But I think it still works for the show. It just brings maybe a different dynamic that might have been unintentional. Because the book character had a naivete in a different kind of way that an older character is naive, if you know what I'm saying. So I'm not saying it's better or worse. I'm just saying it's different. But yeah, overall, I think the actor did an amazing job. I think the writers really know, like, they understand this character, and the whole point is getting you to relate to him as like a smaller folk, someone who's not this great overbearing warrior or going to be. And so I think the episode, everything was structured about it. everything that happened really was there to introduce you to that character and to drive that point home that this is, and also to make you like him, to make you want to root for him and want to see him do better. I think this episode did a good job in establishing that. Anyway, Darrin, your thoughts on Sir Duncan Natal?
Oh no, I'm right there with you. And in fact, like I said, it's been a while, so I couldn't remember how old that Dunk was. I knew, he was youngish, but you're right. With all of these shows, we're used to seeing like the big dumb guy, and he always looks like this big farm kid who's in his indeterminate late teens, early 20s, and I don't know how old this character is, but I do buy that he's basically, I don't know, like anybody with trauma, you kind of lock in at a certain age, and he just seems to be that kind of kid that just connected in to be this knight, and this knight just kept him as his squire and abused him, and he was sort of big and dumb and thus capable, but not easy to learn. So the fact if he's supposed to be 15 or he's his current age, the indeterminate early mid-20s, we'll say, to me works perfectly fine. I didn't even give it a second thought. And to me, I think it actually works so well when we get the interactions with Egg, is that would feel more peer-ish. And this honestly looks like, oh yeah, it's the big adult kid trying, the adult who's more of a kid trying to teach the kid who's kind of like an adult. So I think it actually works for the dynamic they end up starting to get for these characters. So no, I think, yeah, the writing is great. The acting is great. Overall, I think, like I said, if I have a criticism, it might fall on the directing, but no, I think he carried it on perfectly. And he is the person where I was like, I do want to see more of you, because you're at least an earnest person trying to figure out his place in the world. And I think he carried that along beautifully.
Well, I'm going to say that I think that they did a phenomenal job as far as casting is concerned, with Dunk. And the only thing that kind of got me about him was, I don't know, the accent seemed off. Like he sounds way different from most people that we've seen from King's Landing. Like if you listen to them, most of them sound like I guess would be like a typical kind of London accent, and he sounds not exactly Scottish, but it's just different. So it just, yeah, you don't sound like you're from Flea Bottom, but I like your characterization, but also, yeah, accents can change over time as well. So you know what, I'm just gonna take it as he sounds like Flea Bottom for that time period. But any other time we've met characters from Flea Bottom, they usually sound more like typical modern day Londoners would sound like, I guess. So that was the only thing that kind of got me about that, was the accent. But as far as characterization, I mean, I believe Dunk is supposed to be like 17 in the book. And the thing that really got me about this was, he kind of reminds me of, what if Hodor never messed up Hodor's mind? That's exactly what this kind of reminded me of. And it said, we don't have definitive proof yet, but it is said that he is an ancestor of Hodor, possibly Hodor's grandfather or great grandfather. But still don't have confirmation on that one yet. So that would, if it's true, then that makes all this kind of come full circle, because you get to see almost like, what would Hodor have been had he not had his tragic accident with Bran messing with the time stream. Yeah, you definitely get the sense that he's like a big dumb teenager to a certain extent. That's been kind of shared to a certain extent as well, because there are so many things about etiquette that he still doesn't know. You know, being a squire to a hedge knight, there's a lot of, you know, the outsider kind of mentality. You know, when he's trying to climb his way up the social ladder, he's like, well, how do all the other knights do it? Oh, they get to vouch for him. All right, well, yeah, you know, everybody hears about honor, so you know this should be easy because I served so long in the peasantry and we fought in this war and this war and this war and I squired for him, so yeah, we should be good. And that is the naivete of someone who is trying to climb into the upper echelons. Realizing when you don't have any actual you know, name recognition for yourself, trying to piggyback off of somebody else who's also not known really doesn't do it for you. So I liked them showing him having to come to the realization of like, okay, I've gotta get to this on my own, and I've got to smart enough to this world quickly to figure out how I'm going to do that. So that was the thing that I really enjoyed. This, you know, it's definitely a fish out of water story to a certain extent, but at the same point, it definitely feels like an everyman story. Like for any person who stepped into a new situation where essentially they almost got a promotion by default, you know, and now you're trying to, you know, sit at the big boy table, for lack of a better term, you know, and you find out the big boys are playing a totally different game than you know. It was different when you were sitting watching the game versus you sitting trying to get a seat at the table to play the game. So that was the thing that I liked about this and the way that they showed his interactions with people. And, you know, I want to see how they develop it. I mean, obviously we know what the story is, but how they decide to angle so you see his way of trying to get in good with these people and, you know, become the legendary you know, what legendary white cloak that we know him to be in much later times. Stop rambling.
Yeah, no worries. So, yeah, so the next thing I want to get into is the introduction of Egg. And I got to be honest, like, I wasn't as big on this as well. I think I like the actor. I think the actor does a really good job of expressing that sort of arrogance and sort of knowledge beyond his years. But to me, like, I don't think they really established him enough or why um, he would follow Dunk or like the fact that because it's supposed to like the whole series I was sold on was Dunk and Egg, like it's supposed to be their sort of friendship or whatever, and that didn't really come across to me as an introduction that strongly in this episode. Now maybe they're going to do more with it later, but I mean part of that is like, and we'll get into this a bit more later, but they added a bunch of stuff, a bunch of scenes that weren't in the books. So, which I liked, but it sort of stretched out the time before Egg comes back and joins him in Ashford. In the book, that happened a lot sooner. So I feel like Egg was kind of under introduced and that they need to kind of make up for this in future episodes. Darren, what did you think?
Yeah, I'm right on with you. Like I said, I do like the actor. I do like the they definitely conveyed his kind of smart aleckiness, that he talks back a whole lot, but he knows a lot also. So, you know, there's kind of a value to that. And he does seem to be very intent on getting the job done. You know, he definitely seems to want to be a squire. He knows the job. He wants to prove himself. But you're right, there wasn't a grab. And again, kind of like my biggest criticism with the lack of a pull and the director who directs the first 3 episodes here has done a lot of stuff. He's not a nouveau director or anything like that, but I don't think his introduction of any of these characters was very stand outish. Like I said, it just feels like a stroll through stuff where you see some things and people happen. But I really don't feel that that grab with Egg there. And why would he follow Dunk there? And why is he showing up? And, there wasn't anything kind of special outside of his language. And so, yeah, I don't feel honestly that any of the characters were utilized very well. But yeah, we'll have to see how this all sort of plays out, and maybe this is just the beginning and they'll work themselves out more. But yeah, that's kind of the weakest thing. It's like I said, people were there and things happened, but nothing felt super special or grabby, or I don't know. It just didn't pop. And I think that's why Egg felt very backgroundy in this.
Okay. Well, I will say that yes, I definitely agree that Egg was under introduced, but I think that again, this is a Game of Thrones universe story. There's always some sort of mystery to everything, and so I think that he was purposely introduced in this way to make people ask, like, okay, who the hell is this kid? Because, yeah, like, Dunk is looking at him and is like, all right, well, I have somebody who wants to be my squire. But yet he's also being kind of a dick to me right now as well. It's just like, no way that Sir Arlen would have put up with me being like him. But okay, well, you know what? I'm looking at his surroundings because remember, at first he thought that the innkeeper was his mom, so he's thinking to himself like, all right, it's not like he's living in the lap of luxury, He seems like a kid. Probably had to shave his head, because of lice or something. All right, look, come on, fine. You know what? Because I'm trying to make a good show of things. So if I show up to a place and I claim to be a knight, I don't have a squire, it kind of lessens my value. So when Egg shows up and he's like, yeah, look, I cleaned your horses, fed them, I did all the things. I would have raised the pavilion, but then I looked around and realized that you don't have a damn tent. So the fact that this young kid, very young, right? He was like, oh, well, you got to figure if the average squire, I would imagine, is probably going to be somewhere between 10 and 13, just starting off their career. This kid is obviously younger than that. So it's like, how do you even know about, all right, you know what? Since you know about all of this stuff, the stuff that I've been training on for the past, 5-6 years or something, you know what? Fine, come be my squire. It was like, you happen to know more than I do right now, so maybe this is a good look. Maybe I can learn something from you to be an even better knight. So like when he points out that his belt is made of rope, like oh god, yeah, like these are little details that Dunk isn't really thinking about because he's just so into like I get to be a knight. And Egg is sitting there like, yeah, listen, you're kind of the first guy I'm pledging myself to because nobody else will have me. But I got to make you look good. He basically is his like publicist and stylist at this point, and I think that Egg is going to be the one, that ultimately transforms him into somebody that everyone else is going to look at and be like, oh, you know what? he, he looked like a bit of a schlub when he first showed up. And he looks halfway decent now. I wonder how the hell that happened. He was a ball boy. So I like the introduction, and again, I think that they did this on purpose so that the people who have never watched or read the books will be like, okay, well, who is this kid? Because yes, Dunk is the star of the show, but this guy here, something. What is it about him? So I think for those people who have not read the books, when they find out who he is and why he knows so much, it will all make sense in the end.
Yeah, I will say I did enjoy the ending. I thought that was a nice little subtle sort of bonding moment between them when they had the shooting star, and he was like, "Oh, this brings you luck," and everyone else will be in their tent and they won't see it. And at first he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna give you a clout in the air," but then he's like, "So that means we're the only one with that luck." Like that was a nice little ending to the episode, and also that was a good way to sort of get into introduce their friendship and sort of slowly get it. So it had that slow sort of introduction into it, which, as I said, I think it may work depending on what the next episodes do. I just still feel like we could have had a little bit more. I did want to say in the chat, Mr. Joseph was talking about, I believe, the actor who plays Dunk, saying that he has a North Irish accent. And to your point, Don, about accents, I would remind you that Sir Davos was also from Flea Bottom, and that actor was very Irish, had a very Irish accent as well.
I don't remember Davos's accent being as heavily pronounced as Dunk's.
It was different. It was a different kind of accent, but it was very Irish. I thought it was like it sounded like more of a typical Irish accent.
I mean, listen, I just thought about people like Gendry.
Yeah. Most people, I agree, most people are like that, but maybe there's a subsection of Irish people and Flea Bottom.
And that's what I said. Accents change over time, and so maybe that's what Flea Bottom, people in Flea Bottom sounded like 70 years ago. Listen, I'm from New York. There are people who say that I don't sound like I'm from New York. There are people who I know who are born and raised here who I think don't sound like New Yorkers. So I mean, it was depends on where you're from and also the time period. Accents do change, so that's why I was like, I'm trying not to judge too harshly on one, but it was a bit of a distraction.
Yeah, indeed. All right, so let's get into a Dunk arriving in Ashford and trying to get into the tourney. I think again, I like this gets you a sense of this underdog and how they point out that he's dressed like a farmer and how people don't really take him seriously. The one thing that really stood out to me is the use of flashbacks. And this is something I liked about the episode, that we'll see something current. Dunk will say something about was it Sir Pennytree, I believe, was his mentor or whatever you call it before he died. Every time he says something about him, and we'll do a hard cut to a quick flashback, which I liked. I liked that editing style. I thought that was a good way to sort of express it. And usually it would somewhat counter what he was saying, and this comes across something really interesting, because in the scene where Dunk is talking about how he was knighted, how Sir Pennytree, took him and said the words and knighted him, and he's like, oh, he always wanted me to be a knight, and we get a quick flashback to him saying as a kid, oh, I want to be a knight someday or whatever, do you want me to do this? And he just spits. So this is interesting to me, and I've heard other people talk about it, because to me it implies that he's lying about Pennytree knighting him, that he never knighted him, and he's just making up being a knight, which is not the impression I got from the book. Although, to be fair, the book wasn't clear about this either. We just hear Duncan telling the person signing him up for the tourney about this. So, yeah, I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know if I like that implication. I think to me it's better if he was actually knighted. But I don't know. Maybe you guys don't think it makes a difference. Yeah. So, Darrin, what do you think of that?
I completely agree with the hard cuts. That was the one thing I did kind of like, because it was the little insight, and also the fact that they were so quick. Boom, scene, right back. So they were commentaries, they were quick reflections, and I think that worked really well. Yeah, you bring up an interesting point, because it does sort of imply that he may not be entirely truthful here, but I did not get that he was a liar. There is something about his earnestness where the fact that we don't see that happening, we just hear it from Dunk with that idea of, well, was he telling the truth? Was he not? But maybe that's even just how he saw it in his own mind as that whole happened. So, yeah, it doesn't mean a whole lot to me on that. But I didn't necessarily take that reflection as an untruth, as opposed to maybe he was glorifying it a little bit. You always wanted to be a knight. It's like, well, no, you wanted to be a knight. And maybe he eventually gave in, but when it started, he was more of like, because you got to figure, if you take him as a squire, that's the end of the road, is for him to be a knight. You're not like a squire and then you go on to become a carpenter. I don't really know, but I'm assuming that's the direction that things go. So no, I took that more as just kind of a comic reflection that he might be making the story a little more grandiose than it actually is, but not that he was lying at any point.
Embellishing.
Embellishing. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's the word I'm looking for. I'm getting old, man. It's so hard to find the words that I want. They used to be right there. I gotta hunt them down sometimes. It sucks.
Yeah. Don, your thoughts on this?
Listen, you know what? Dunk is a goddamn. Nah, listen, I'll be honest with you. Like, I got the impression that he definitely lied to get into the list, because he's like, you know what? Who am I going to now squire for? Right? Everyone is at this tournament. If they're at the tournament, they probably already have a squire, which means they're not going to take on a second one. You know what? I got nothing to lose at this point. I literally have only these 3 horses and a sword. Who's am I? Now, again, I don't think he did this for malicious reasons. He's, like I said, you go to squire for somebody to become a knight. So I'm gonna, go and take a step back now when I have the opportunity to step into the thing that I wanted to do, before. Listen, what is it gonna hurt anybody? Who is this? Who is this harming for me to claim to be a knight right now? I'm just trying to get some food for me and my horses. Look, yeah, was it the honorable thing to do? No. Was it the moral thing to do? No. Was it the, you know what, I need to be able to survive thing to do? Yes, it was. And listen, sometimes you gotta tell a little bit of embellishment to get what you actually need. It's about what you want. It's about what you actually need. I mean, like you said, he could have sold the horses and lived like a king for a year. But then what? Then you're out of horses and out of food and out of money. I've been a squire this entire time, and who's going to accept now an 18-year-old squire? Nobody. No, you have little kids for this. You go be a foot soldier somewhere or something, and nah, man. Listen, I came here for glory. So all in the peasantry, instilled all this stuff, and he was always chasing the dream. So to hell with it. I'm gonna chase the old man's dream.
Yeah, and it could certainly be that because he was the squire, well, now he's a knight, even if he wasn't like actually knighted the way that he told that he was. That's where I think in some of this, it is a little bit of like, he means well, but he may be over embellishing in his mind. The funny thing is also the guy who's like trying to get him on the lists, ultimately with even his big threat of what is it, the Ashford chair? Well, we tie up your hands and your feet, and then we drop you onto a thing, and they're like, no, man, I'm kidding you. Of course, just get somebody to vouch for you. It's like, honestly, he doesn't even care if he was actually knighted by this guy. Just get someone to vouch for you, which kind of, I don't know, I think underscores the whole thing. Was he lying or not? Ultimately, they don't care as long as somebody just says, yeah, you're good enough.
I don't know. I did get the sense that he was sort of gatekeeping a little bit, being like, you're dressed as a farmer, you look a little danky. So if you're going to enter us into this tournament, you got to have someone else to back that up. Kind of like we can't just let any Joe Smo who wants to go and call themselves a knight.
It's always who you know.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing I was going to say is he looks to me to be a squire of like 26 or 27, not 18. But they always get the older actors to play younger characters. So speaking of embellishing, some people might say that the show itself tries to embellish the story with adding extra scenes that weren't in the book. And that's the thing. Like, this is a very, very faithful adaptation. Like, I think Don mentioned earlier that the lines are like beat for beat. Like, they don't really change the lines. They don't really change the story. Like, it's going pretty much as it's set out in the book, but they do add extra scenes. Like, so they do add extra stuff. And I feel like after reading the book and how short it is, that they kind of needed to. And if they wanted to do 6 episodes, I feel like there's not enough there to fill out 6 episodes. I feel like they needed to add some extra stuff. And I've heard some people online be like, oh my God, extra stuff. Oh, these showrunners, I always have to add extra things. I thought it really worked. I like the stuff that they added. It does change the dynamic a bit, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, for example, with him talking to those women, I thought it was a great, because we don't get his internal monologue the way we do in the book. So I think we need a bit more fleshing out through dialogue. So like when the women's like, oh, what's a hedge knight? They're kind of explaining what that is to the audience and saying, oh, it's like a real knight, only sadder. Like, I thought that was funny. I thought that really set the tone and the introduction to it. And when he was, saying to them, don't mock me. And they're like, no, we're not mocking you, whatever. So I like the stuff that they added, and of course they also added the stuff with Sir Lionel Baratheon. That stuff I really liked as well. It was really got fleshing out the world a bit more and sort of seeing his interaction through this eccentric, over the top character, and how Dunk kind of wins him over with this like sort of everyday, everyman like kind of charm, like this and the way he's able to sort of think on his feet when Sir Lionel first confronts him, and how they get drunk together. And I like the dancing scene as well, how he keeps stepping on his foot, and which leads to a dance. Like, so all that stuff like really worked for me. And plus, the actor, again, acting's really good. You can't say anything bad about the acting in the show, but the actor who plays Baratheon like did a great job. Like, I really like him. He gets this whole like eccentricness and craziness across, but not in a sort of ruthless kind of Joffrey way or something. It's more like, at first you think maybe this is going to be like a ruthless kind of character, but he's not. He's just more like like King Baratheon from from Game of Thrones kind of thing. But anyway, Don, what were your thoughts on the extra scenes and Sir Lionel?
Listen, as far as the extra, scenes were concerned, I didn't see an issue with it. And again, if I'm someone who never read the books, and this is how I try to look at it before I just some comparison. If I had never read the books before, I'm gonna be sitting up there like, what the hell is a Hedge Knight? Because that's not something common in your everyday lexicon, and not even if I had watched, like, let's say if I had watched all of the Game of Thrones, all the House of the Dragon, but still never read the books, I don't remember hearing the phrase Hedge Knight in any of those other two series. So I'm gonna be sitting up there like, okay, what the hell is a Hedge Knight? But, you get 5 seconds worth of explainer. You like, ooh, they like, no, don't go it out of order. Sometimes you need a little bit of exposition to catch people up on things. So I had no issue with that at all. And then, again, yes, Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Like, all three, these are novellas. These are very, very short stories. And it's almost like the way that they're written are almost like the truncated versions of the actual events as well. We're not getting, even though we're getting things from Dunk's perspective in the book, it's still not everything that's happening. So, we're going to need some background scenes to flesh out the stuff that we are not getting from Dunk's perspective, because everything, like, not every scene can be from his perspective. So for the times where they need to cut away from him and we have other characters that have to come on screen, then flesh out their characters so we have a reason to care about them for when they're eventually slaughtered, because this is a Game of Thrones show. Right. And as far as Sir Lionel Baratheon, the Laughing Storm, I liked the characterization. I have a problem with the physicality. 2 reasons. 1, he is a Baratheon. Baratheons are always, for the most part, described as damn near, like they climbed down off the Incredible Hulk tree into Westeros. Like, Baratheons are usually just always described as being very large, robust men. And even women, because Rhaenys was described as kind of like a very stout woman. Baratheons are usually in the books depicted as much, more, much more just kind of solid. Like think about your average WWE wrestler or something, and that's what I think of whenever I hear about Baratheons. And the other thing is older than what I feel like he should be. And the only reason why I mention age is because, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but what we'll say is there is an event that happens way later, something that hasn't been necessarily depicted in the books, but is referenced in a World of Ice and Fire. Yes, in the World of Ice and Fire. not in Fire and Blood yet. But there's an event that happens that involves Lionel, the Laughing Storm, and to me, like the age that they have him here, or what it seems like, by the time we get there, we're like, oh man, he'd be kind of an old man doing this. Yeah, I don't know that. Yeah, I don't know that he'd want to be doing that at that age. I mean, because he's very gray or salt and pepper in the show, very salt and pepper. So I'm imagining here he's supposed to be in like his late 30s to early 40s, and the event that I'm thinking about, if I'm correct, is probably another 30 years in the future. So to me, I'm like, I don't know that 70-something-year-old Lionel Baratheon would be such a laughing storm at that point. So those are my only issues with his characterization, and again, it's all physicality and the way that they depicted him. The actor, I think, played a very like, as far as the attitude is concerned, 100% everything that I think about a Baratheon, from Robert to even damn it, the one that showed up in House of the Dragon at Storm's End. Like, yeah, he definitely seems like he is from that same family tree. He definitely seems like he comes from, like, yes, my family are basically the jocks of Westeros. You think of, your number one star, professional athlete or something like that, you think the name Baratheon. And yeah, so frat boy, yes, alpha frat boy, rugby football player, Baratheon. Boom. He definitely fits the mold as far as attitude is concerned.
So it does seem to me though that your main problem with the physicality of the characters is based off your knowledge of the books. That maybe someone who's never read any of the books and just watching the show might not notice the difference.
Yes, so I will say that it's kind of my book bias creeping in, unfortunately. But it's only because of things that I know about him from the book that happen in the future. So seeing it on screen now, it's kind of like, but if he looks like this, that means that it wouldn't look right later.
But that's fair. It is fair, but it's just someone who hasn't read the books might not have any problem with it.
Yeah. Until we get to A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, season 7, and
well, as long as it's not anything like Game of Thrones season 7, we'll be okay. But anyway,
well, let's not go there, man. Well, as I said, since it has been a while, I was unsure of any added scenes that were on this, so I can't really critique any of them. I do agree the one with the girls there that we're talking about, Hedge Knight, only sadder, and then we get to see where he goes and stays out, so we get to kind of fill in everything. Oh, okay, so this is what they mean, is he's got to go out here because he doesn't have the big pavilion and all of that stuff. Okay, so no, I think that was all really well done. And that is kind of the stuff, you're right, you have to add into these when you have internal dialogue that you can't directly convey onto unless you just want to have like narration over a story. And that's always best avoided if possible. Yeah, look, while it's very hard to miss a Baratheon if he has giant deer horn crowns that he's wandering around and potentially, puncturing the eyes out of his guests as he dances on the floor. It still took a bit for me to realize, oh, Baratheon. Oh, right, because here, otherwise I was just like, who is this guy with the weird deer horn? So I don't think Yeah, and that way I gotta kind of go with Don is I'm not sure if his physicality is impressed upon me a Baratheon, or I just, while we got to stay with this character and evolve with him, if his introduction actually made sense of why he was here and such, because, was the Freya's kid or whatever brought him up to go and eat here, which was where I'm assuming where all the knights were. And what is Baratheon hosting this? Is it just his party that he's hosting, or is it the whole tournament, which I sort of got? But yeah, as I said, I it took a bit for me to realize, oh, Baratheon would be the only thing that I would say in introducing with the character. If he was younger and kind of more of Dunk's age, it would be more of a bro thing, whereas this seems to be more of the, I've been around and you look like a knight when I was younger doing things, and that's how we'll connect. Different reasons for two characters to connect. I did get that this was their kind of little bonding scene where they can party and talk together, and that's just going to be the connection that he has. The only weird thing with this is then afterwards, I'm like, well, he doesn't need to find somebody to give him permission here, because obviously the guy who's running the place is his buddy now, so this should all be fine. That might be the only thing that, depending on how the next episode plays out, I might have to ask, because it still seemed like he was looking for permission afterwards, or the Dunk was, when I would have thought that's what this scene accomplished.
So I will say I don't think that Lionel Baratheon's running the tournament. I think that was just his little party tent that Dunk wandered into.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That, to me, that was all a little muddied.
Okay.
And so I didn't really understand.
Well, if I may, the other thing I was going to say, like you said, you didn't think that you weren't sure whether or not he was asking for permission or if he could just use Lionel Baratheon. The thing about it is, though, Lionel said he's drunk.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure the next morning when Duck goes up to him, is like, "Hey, Lord Lionel," he's like, yeah, who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah, and that I would totally go with. See, that would be then, oh, now we have a new complication, and maybe that's what we'll see. Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say, like, even if he did remember him, just because they had that nice chat doesn't necessarily mean he'd be willing to vouch for him as a knight. So, yeah, fair, I don't know. Fair. That was just my interpretation of it. So I want to talk about the biggest issue I had with the show, which actually wasn't in the episode. It was technically after the episode, which was the preview, the trailer for for the rest of the season, and they give the whole story away. Like, you could just watch that trailer instead of watching the show and understand what happens in the show. And I'm like, so if you haven't seen the trailer and you haven't read the books, do not watch that trailer. Like, don't watch it. I was like, I know there's been like a comment, and it was probably like the marketing people who made the trailer and not anyone involved with the show or the story. And I wonder if they think the same too. It's like, good God, like, you give everything away. And that's been a problem with a lot of like modern day trailers, not like everyone, but yeah, this was one of the worst examples I think I saw of that. Yeah. Anyone?
Yeah. No, because that was the first thing I did when I was like, 42 minutes. Oh, that seemed quick. Now I have to go through this giant credit sequence. Okay. Fast forward. What does the season do? And I kind of agree. I was like, okay, see, there is a lot that's going on here. Like, why didn't we see any of that in the beginning? This seems almost like two different stories. And that's what I'm saying, is this was kind of like a slow intro. And then they're like, but don't worry, there's going to be knights in action and all this stuff. I'm like, didn't you just like have a guy shitting at your last Game of Thrones like swell up of music there. So you were saying it's not that, but then you're like, no, don't worry, it's gonna be that. So yeah, I mean, it's been long enough that I didn't necessarily get like, oh, they're giving us the whole thing, because I was thinking of 8-hour-long episodes, not 6 half-hour-long episodes. It would be an entirely different amount of story. In which case, yes, you just showed a bit out of every episode, didn't you, of what's to come up? What do you... Yeah, so I totally see what you're saying. My frustration was more along the lines of like, this looks like a totally different story than what we just saw. What do you think, Don?
So I'm gonna say that, I watched the trailer, but I didn't really pay attention to it. So I didn't necessarily the same thing you guys got out of it. I was just like, all right, I think, oh, okay, he's got a stag armor. Cool. All right, stuff. I was thinking, okay, all right, fine. That was basically how I felt about it. I wasn't really paying attention too much to the trailer. It's like, all right, well, I know we got 5 more short ass episodes coming up, so I hope they're good. I'm like, there aren't gonna be explosions. There aren't gonna be any dragons, no magic, anything like that. So, I just hope that the storytelling lives up to how it was in the book.
Yeah. And like I feel like if you break down the first short story, The Hedge Knight, into the key beats that happen, like it was all there in the trailer, except for maybe the final beat. Like they left that out, but feels like doom did all this happen. So I was like, why even bother watching the show now? But anyway,
I mean, well, there was still a couple of introductions that we haven't gotten yet, though.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, there's quite a few introductions that we still haven't gotten yet. So I mean, and I think that they did a good job of keeping those characters out of the trailer too, because the only one that I remember seeing is the main adversary.
Yeah.
But other than that, there's still a bunch of people that we have not been introduced to yet.
I don't know. I feel like the important ones were in the trailer.
I'm going to say that there are at least two who are very important who weren't in the trailer.
Okay.
They've changed the characterization of what they look like, because we know that they do that from time to time.
I think you might have missed it. I think you didn't recognize them, because I'm pretty sure, like, when I think of all the main characters of the story, I remember seeing all of them in the trailer. So, I know, we'll talk off air and see what you're talking about. All right. Yeah, so we can go ahead and wrap up this discussion now. Thank you both so much for joining, and thanks everyone in the chat for joining us, watching this live, or if you're watching this in the archives. Thanks so much for joining in, and we will be here every week, every Monday night, to talk about each of the episodes, which hopefully get better for Darrin and Don and get more interesting. But yeah, any sort of parting thoughts or final thoughts before we go? Darrin, we'll start with you.
I agree with you. I did love that final little scene with the shooting star as a kind of little bonding and point forward that there's, it did get a little emotional. So yeah, even though, as I said, it didn't grab me as much at the end, I was feeling good about stuff. So I do look forward to see where they're going to go with this. Wow. Half-hour episodes. That's going to be hard to get their pacing right so that it feels like little complete stories. Ultimately, I may wonder, like, should this have been like 2 movies, or is it better as a series? I mean, we'll end up seeing how it is. It's definitely smarter to do a week to week for a while. So I'm excited to see where we're going next week, and I'm looking forward to see how this all plays out. So, yeah, I mean, despite my criticism, I still enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the next episode is.
I think that it might end up being something that's like a put together as just one long movie rather than individual episodes. And I know some people complain about that, where each episode should be self-contained, but there's some shows where it's not that I think works depending on the story. So I think it could work still depending on what they do with it.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, well, yeah. Breaking Bad was one of those that not every episode was self-contained, and that worked very well for the story. So you can do things, you chop up one story into sections and have it where everything fits together. And yes, it probably would have been to see everything all at once, but I think that sometimes you need that little bit of a break just to intake what you have already established. Take that, break it down, analyze it, and then when the next part starts up, you start with a clear perspective on things. Um, and maybe sometimes you get to see things on a second go around that you missed the first time, so that when the next story or the next part of the story starts up, like, you know what, I'm gonna be looking a little bit more because I recognize something on a rewatch that I didn't see the first time. So sometimes it's good to break things up like that, and you get to, like, let's put it like this: for the first time anybody had ever watched Into or what do you call it, Pulp Fiction, there are things that you don't get on the first watch that you on the second, and sometimes it's like, yeah, if these movies would have been broken down into sections, we could have watched them at our leisure, and then the other parts come out. It would have made things. It would have made the experience different. So I like how they're doing this so far. And I hope that the storytelling. I just want the storytelling to match the level of the book. That's all.
Fair enough. All right, so yeah, if you guys just want to shout out what you could be up to or where people can find you, that sort of thing. I know, Don, you don't have a lot going on right now, but if you just want to.
Yeah. So you know what? I'm gonna be making some merch. Night of the Seven Kingdoms merch, and it'll be available starting next week. I'll be wearing one of the t-shirts, and I got to send you guys some.
Oh yeah. Yeah, if you have a link or something, I can put that in the description of the video as well.
Not yet. I'll make the store this week, and I'll link, so by the time the next episode, we'll have everything set up.
Cool.
Hey, I love me a good t-shirt. So yeah, I'm all onto that, Don. Yeah, I am doing nothing really over on my channel right now, but I have been working with Rob over on Smirking Guns. We're doing Fallout weekly, so that we're doing those on Thursday nights over on Smirking Gun Reviews. Enjoying the heck out of that this new season, so that's pretty awesome. We've also paired up to do a little bit more current events, political commentary outside of the pulp culture spectrum. And you can catch that on our channel, The Outer Rim Pod, right here on YouTube. We've got 10 episodes now. Mark joined us for a good one at the end of last year, doing talking about Star Trek. And is that a possible reality of a world that we could aspire to? How would that happen? Was really a fun chat. So definitely go check that out over at The Outer Rim.
Cool. And if you're finding me for the first time, my channel's Enchantment of Eternity. My name's Mark. I am covering mostly Star Trek. I'm on this mission to cover every single episode of Star Trek, currently up to season 5 of Deep Space Nine and season 3 of Voyager. And then I have lots of other random live stuff going on. Like, as I said, we'll be here every week to talk about Night of the Seven Kingdoms, and also we'll be covering the new Starfleet Academy show as that airs as well. So yeah, be sure to check me out for that. And thanks so much for joining, and we'll see you next time.